Good morning, students. Today we are going to revise chapter 6 from your history book, that is Town, Traders and Craftsperson. In this chapter, we are going to revise about the main types of towns we were having, what were the different kind of trades which were prevalent in the Indian society. We will study in detail about the craftspersons. So let's begin with the reading of the chapter, and along with that, we will do the explanation part. So here you can see in this map some important centers of trade and artistic production centers of Central India and South India have been described over here. You can see all these places were very important from the point of view of trading, and most of the businesses were being developed over around these areas. So the chapter starts with the towns, and in towns we need to understand that there were different kind of towns over there. There were temple towns, administrative towns, commercial towns, port towns, and as the name suggests, these towns were popular for the specific reasons. Like temple towns, we were having temple towns and pilgrim centers were there, and temple towns represent a very important pattern of urbanization, the process by which city develop. Temples were often central to the economy and society. Why? Because the rulers used to build temples to demonstrate their devotion to God, one thing, and they also built temples to demonstrate their power, right? And that's why they used to build very grand temples, and we have such grand temples which were being made some 1800 years ago. All over India you will find such kind of old temples which themselves even today tells the story of the success of those towns, right? So these kings used to give large grants of land and money for the temples, and these temples were also having so much money which the pilgrims used to donate to the temple. So these temples were were establishment which were very, very rich, right? So we have number of temples which are like can be counted. Mathura was a famous temple town. Then we have Tanjavur there, where we find very large temples and very beautiful temples also. Then apart from being temple towns, there were administrative towns also. So administrative towns, what does we understand by the administrative towns? The town from where all the administration work was being carried, या आप ये कह दीजिए मेन सिटी जहाँ पर ये कैपिटल सिटी जहाँ पर किंग था, जहाँ पर सारे मिनिस्टर्स थे और जहाँ से सारा एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क जो होता था बेसिकली जो था होता था. तो यहाँ पर इन दिस बुक you read about the Chola dynasty. We have read about that in chapter 2. So let's travel in our imagination to Tanjavur, the capital of Cholas, as it was 1,000 years ago. So a perennial river Kaveri flows near this beautiful town. One hears the bells of the Raja Rajeshwara temple built by King Raja Chola. We have discussed that the king used to have a place or godlike place in the society in the front of his subject, so they sometimes have the same name as the deities. So आप देख रहे हैं राजा राजेश्वर टेम्पल, और किसने बनाया? राजा राजा चौला ने. द टाउन्स पीपल आर ऑल प्रेज फॉर इट्स आर्किटेक्ट जो थे कुंजरा मलान राजा राजा पेरुंथ Chanan, who has proudly craved his name on the temple wall inside a massive शिवलिंगा. यानी कहाँ से हमें पता लगता है हिस्ट्री के बारे में? ये जो नेम्स हमें पता लग रहे हैं, कहाँ से पता लग रहे हैं? Those people have like saved this for history, राइट, फॉर द फ्यूचर जनरेशन, कि वो उन्होंने अपना नाम क्रेव कर रखा था, उसके ऊपर उन्होंने कार्विंग से खोद के लिखा हुआ था, जो इतने सालों बाद भी हमें आज उनका नाम पता है. बिसाइड द टेम्पल देयर वर पैलेसेस वर देयर विद मंडपास और पेवेलियंस. किंग होल्ड कोर्ट इन दीज मंडपास, इशूइंग ऑर्डर टू देयर सबऑर्डिनेट्स. देयर आर ऑल्सो बैरक्स फॉर द army. So you see that in a administrative town there were temple, there were palaces, huge palaces where the king used to hold their court. Then there were barrack for the army because this was the main prominent city, so it has to be safe from the invaders. So that's why there were barrack for the army also. The town is bustling with markets selling grains. There were markets, and so many traders were doing business over there. And because it was a very busy and very active place, so all the facilities were also there, like wells, water supply for the town come from wells and takes. The Salia weavers of Tanjavur and the nearby town of Urayur are busy producing cloth for flag to be used in the temple festival. Fine clothes for the king and nobility and chorus cotton for the masses. This line depicts that there was a social difference in the classes. The way king and nobility used to wear clothes, the common people were using different stuff. Some distance away at Savai Malai, the Satyapatis or sculptures are making exquisite bronze idols and tall ornamental bell metal lamps. We have discussed while doing this what was this bell metal technique were made from bronze, bell metal were made from lost wax technique. We have read about this technique, and you can see in this picture that there is a picture of a statue, bronze statue of Lord Krishna and Kalyanag, which was done with the lost wick technique. We have learnt while doing the chapter that in this way the image was made of wicks, then it was covered with clay, and then it was like allowed to dry so that it can harden up. Next, it was heated and a tiny hole was made in the clay cover. Then molten wax was drained out because you have heated it. So initially this statue was of wax. So the wax inside get molten and that wax is taken out from that hole. And once the metal through that hole, molten metal was poured into the clay so that it can take up the shape of the statue. And once metal is cooled and solidified, the clay cover was carefully removed. Then the image was like polished, and this was the way how they made these beautiful kind of bronze sculptures, right? So it was done using the lost wax technique. Please keep this in mind because this is one important thing. Okay, so we have read about the administrative town, we have read about temple towns. Okay, and we have also seen how how a town was called a commercial town. If a town was called a commercial town when lot many trades were carrying on over there. Like we have seen in Tanjavur that there were traders who were doing trading of different things for clothes, for spices, and then there was artisans who were making very beautiful bronze idols over there, right? Okay, so a network of small towns. From the 8th century onwards, the subcontinent was dotted with several small towns. These probably emerged from large villages. They usually had a mandapika, जिसको आप mandapika means mandi. Mandi means जहाँ से nearby villagers अपने products को sell करने के लिए या दूसरों के product को खरीदने के लिए आते थे. They also had market street called hart. ठीक है, lined with shops. Beside there were street for different kind of artisans such as potters, oil pressers, sugar makers, toddy makers, smith, stone masons. So these were the various commercial activities which were being taking place in these commercial towns. While some traders lived in towns, some traveled from town to town. ट्रैवल फ्रॉम टाउन टू टाउन मतलब वेंडरर्स या नोमैड्स टाइप के उनका अभी भी वे ऑफ लिविंग है. मेनी केम फ्रॉम फार एंड नियर टू दीज टाउन्स टू बाय लोकल आर्टिकल्स एंड सेल प्रोडक्ट्स ऑफ डिस्टेंस लाइक हॉर्सेस, सॉल्ट, comfort, saffron, betel nut and spices like pepper. तो यानी कि ट्रेडिंग बहुत ही एक्टिव जो था पार्ट ऑफ कमर्शियल लाइफ था. Trading was there. People were like going to far away land. They were bringing the precious or well-known products of those lands and they were selling them in the local areas. Usually a samanta or in later times a zamindar built a fortified palace in or near these towns. They levied taxes on traders, artisans and articles of trade and sometimes donated the right to collect these taxes to local temple which has been built by themselves or by rich merchants. These rights were located in the inscription that have survived to this date. So obviously these inscriptions were there, these records are there. That's how we are getting so precise knowledge about the towns which were there thousands of years ago. This is the only way how we can learn, na? बिकॉज जो रिटन डॉक्यूमेंट्स होते हैं वो बहुत ही प्रिसाइज इन्फॉर्मेशन हमें देते हैं. जितने बाकी जो हैं लाइक अगर कोई पेंटिंग्स हैं या कोई हमें डक करते हुए कोई चीज़ एक्सप्लेनेशन के थ्रू मिली है तो वो चीज़ हमारा उसमें आइडिया ज़्यादा चलता है. लेकिन जो रिटन इंस्क्रिप्शंस वगैरह मिलते हैं दे गिव अस द प्रिसाइज नॉलेज अबाउट दैट एरा. So we have learned over there that tax system was there also. They were levying tax on traders so that they can maintain the towns. So इस तरह के टाउन्स थे जैसे जितनी भी शुगर है, जैगरी है, डाइज है, थ्रेड है, कॉटन है, कोकोनट, सॉल्ट, सब पे टैक्सेस लगा रखे हैं. तो सम टैक्सेस वर कलेक्टेड इन काइंड, कुछ तो सामान की तरह एक्सचेंज कर लिया जाता था और कुछ के लिए कैश भी यूज़ किया जाता था. Now coming on to the traders, if we see that traders are of two types. There were big traders and small traders were there. बंजारास भी थे, जैसे अभी हमने यहाँ पर पीछे पढ़ा था कि some people keep on moving and they used to trade. तो those people were बंजारास जो कि एक जगह पे टिकते नहीं थे, wanderers थे और नॉमेटिक लाइफ जीते थे. और उनका क्या काम था, एक जगह का जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा पॉपुलर प्रोडक्ट है वो लेना और दूसरी दूर जगह के जाके उसको बेचना सो दैट दे कैन अर्न द प्रॉफिट आउट ऑफ दैट. So these were about the small trader or the nomadic type of trader who were called Banjara. But apart from that, there were big traders also, and these big traders were so powerful that they have their own guilds. Guilds means उनकी अपनी associations होती थी और वो associations इतनी powerful और इतनी extensive होती थी कि वो आपके throughout the world आपको मिलेंगी. Like Southern East Asia तक reach थी, चाइना तक थी. स्पेशली जो चेट्टियार्स थे और जो मारवाड़ी ओसवाल्स थे, दे वर द मेन वेरी पावरफुल ट्रेडिंग ग्रुप ऑफ द कंट्री. गुजराती ट्रेडर्स वर देयर, हिंदू बनियाज वर देयर, मुस्लिम्स बोहराज वर देयर. दीज वर द सम वेरी इन्फ्लुएंशियल ट्रेडर कम्युनिटीज ऑफ दोज एरा. Right, and they were extensively trading in Persia, Gulf, East Africa, Asia, China. So you can see how much flourishing business India was having in those days. And they used to sell textiles, spices, and in turn they used to get the popular products of these far off countries. So the towns on the west coasts were home to Arabs, Persians, Chinese, Jewish, and Syrian Christian traders. Indian spices and clothes sold in the Red Sea ports were purchased by Italian traders and eventually reached European market. And यहीं से यूरोपियंस को इतना पसंद आया, इतना फेमस हो गया कि वो जो स्पाइसेस थे, यहाँ के जितने भी मसाले थे, वो इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट बन गए यूरोपियन कुकिंग के. और फिर उसकी खोज तक वो लोग यहाँ तक आते गए. This was about the traders. And if we talk about the crafts in the town, there were various crowds which were like flourishing in those era. There were persons of Bidars which were very famous for their inlay work in copper and silver, and their work is called Bidri. The Panchalas or Vishkarmas community consisting of goldsmith, bronzesmith, blacksmith, masons, carpenters were essential to the building of temples, and they also played an important role in the construction of palaces, big buildings, tanks and reservoirs. And similarly, weavers such as Saliar or Calcolers emerged as prosperous communities. So these were some famous craft persons, and these are some famous craft over there, right? So if means these were the like many towns used to like flourish at one moment, then they doomed, then some other place became very important and it flourished again. So this was the thing which was happening in the past. And if we see about 3 towns in this chapter, we are like can have detailed study about three important towns, that is Hampi, Masulipattnam and Surat. Hampi is very famous, still it is very famous for the architectural splendor, and Hampi is located on river Krishna, Tungbhadra basin के अंदर है ये, and which formed the nucleus of the Vijayanagara Empire. It was founded in 1336 और आज भी इस वेल फोर्टिफाइड सिटी के जो राइन्स हैं वो आपको बताते हैं कि कितनी डेवलप टेक्नोलॉजी थी. इवन कोई सीमेंट यूज़ नहीं था, ब्रिक्स की इंटरलॉकिंग से पूरा टाउन बना था और बहुत ही ब्यूटीफुल था. हम्पी का जो आर्किटेक्चर है वो बहुत ही डिस्टिंक्टिव है. इसकी आर्च, इसके मतलब इतना ब्यूटीफुल है कि आज भी हम्पी वन ऑफ द मोस्ट विजिटेड टूरिस्ट डेस्टिनेशन है इंडिया के अंदर. राइट, वेल प्लान ऑर्किड्स थे, गार्डन्स थे और हम्पी बस्टल विद द कमर्शियल एंड कल्चरल एक्टिविटीज़ ऑल्सो. मुस्लिम मर्चेंट, चेटियाज, एजेंट ऑफ यूरोपियन ट्रेडर्स, पोर्तुगीज़, ये सब हम्पी की मार्केट में घूमते रहते थे. और टेम्पल्स वर द हम्प ऑफ कल्चरल एक्टिविटीज़ एंड देवदासीज, मतलब जो टाउन्स डांसर्स थे, टेम्पल डांसर्स थे, वो डेटी के मतलब बहुत बड़े बड़े यहाँ पर आपके फंक्शंस होते थे. और महानवमी का जो फेस्टिवल था, जिसको आप नवरात्रि भी बोलते हैं, एक इम्पॉर्टेंट डे होता था जब देवदासीज वगैरह के डांसेस वगैरह जो होते थे इधर के अंदर. लेकिन हम्पी जो था 1565 तक आते आते, क्योंकि दक्कन सुल्तान्स जो थे, जो गोलकोंडा, बीजापुर, अहमदनगर, बरार के जो रूलर्स थे, बिदार के रूलर्स थे, इन्होंने हम्पी को जो था डिफीट किया था और उसके बाद इस टाउन की डिस्ट्रक्शन जो थी स्टार्ट हो गई थी. Then if we learn about Surat, Surat was in Gujarat and was the emporium of western trade, क्योंकि ये जो था एक गेटवे था मक्का के लिए, जो कि पिलग्रिम सेंटर्स था. तो यहाँ से तो बहुत सारी जो शिप्स थी वो जाती थी और इट्स बीइंग अ पोर्ट सिटी, बहुत सारी शिप्स यहाँ पर आती थी. तो यहाँ पर इट वाज अ बस्टलिंग सेंटर ऑफ ट्रेड और बहुत सारा ट्रेड होता था. सूरत का जो था टेक्सटाइल और स्पेशली उसकी जो गोल्डन लेस बॉर्डर जरी थी वो बहुत फेमस थी वेस्ट एशिया में, अफ्रीका में, यूरोप में. और इसकी वजह से ये लोग बहुत फेमस हुए और यहाँ के काठियावाड़ सेट्स, महाजन्स जो थे, उनका इतना रसूख था कि उनकी दी हुई हुंडीज जो थी इजिप्ट, इराक, बेल्जियम तक जो थी वो वैलिड थी, उनको वैल्यू मिली हुई थी. हुंडी मीन्स कि मतलब आपने इंडिया में कुछ डिपॉजिट किया, करा दिया किसी काठियावाड़ सेठ के पास और उसका इतना पावर है, उसका इतना अच्छा पैसे का लेन देन है कि बेल्जियम तक आपको उसके नाम पे क्रेडिट जो था मिल जाता था. बट अगेन एज वी हैव लाइक रेड की टाउन्स जो थे वो बनते और बर्बाद होते रहे, तो सूरत का भी डिक्लाइन जो था वो 17वीं सेंचुरी में आ गया और इसकी जो बहुत सारे थे मार्केट्स वगैरह, उनकी प्रोडक्टिविटी जो थी वो कम होती गई, क्योंकि तब तक पुर्तगीज़ का जो था वो कैप्चर हो गया उस रूट के ऊपर और उनका बहुत सारा सेटअप बॉम्बे में था. तो इसको सूरत को वहाँ से ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी से जो था वो कंपटीशन मिलने लगा और धीरे धीरे ये टाउन जो था वो डूम हो गया. Then next we need to learn about Masulipattnam. Masulipattnam जिसको मछलीपट्टनम भी बोलते हैं, and it is in the lay on the delta of the river Krishna. And it was like a center of intense activity in the 17th century. Both Dutch and English East India companies attempted to control Masulipattnam as it became the most important port on the Andhra coast. The fort at Masulipattnam was first, Dutch built their first port in Masulipattnam, right? सो मसूलीपट्टनम जो था वो बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट था. इस पे भी बहुत टाइम डच और इंग्लिश जो थे करते रहे. उसके बाद जब मुग़ल एम्परर औरंगज़ेब ने गोलकोंडा को एनेक्स किया तो वहाँ पर बहुत सारे चेंजेस आए और धीरे धीरे मछलीपट्टनम भी जो था उसकी भी प्रॉस्पेरिटी जो है 18वीं सेंचुरी आते आते तक जो थी वो लॉस्ट हो गई. सो इस तरह आप देख रहे हैं कि नए पुराने जो टाउन इम्पॉर्टेंट थे वो डूम्ड हो गए, तो ऑब्वियसली कुछ नए ट्रेडिंग सेंटर्स भी तो डेवलप हुए होंगे. तो जो 16th और 17th सेंचुरी के अंदर यूरोपियन कंट्रीज वर सर्चिंग फॉर स्पाइसेस एंड textile which had become popular both in Europe and West Asia. The English, Dutch and French formed East India Company in order to extend their commercial activity in East. Initially, great Indian traders like Mola Abdul Ghaffar and Virji Vora, who owned a large number of ships competed with them. However, the European companies used their naval power to gain control to the sea trade and food, Indian traders to work as their agent. Ultimately, the English emerged as the most successful commercial and political power in the subcontinent. Like they have suppressed the native Indians, they have suppressed Portuguese, Dutch, and even French people, and they like became the most powerful um, identity in India, right? And they start fetching revenue, they start exploiting this country, and इस तरह से जो उनके नए जो उन्होंने सेंटर्स दे किए वो मुंबई, कोलकाता और मद्रास को उन्होंने अपना मेन सेंटर बनाया. तो एज न्यू टाउन दीज places begin to develop. So, in this section, we are just going to touch few facts. We will be reading about Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus. So, Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese sailor who sailed down to African coast and went to Cape of Good Hope. And from Cape of Good Hope, he came to India in 1498, and he reached Calicut. And when he returned, it was a very very tiresome and long journey for him. He lost two of his four ships, and of the 170 men, only 54 survived when we went back to his country. And he was but he opened a new place, and more sailors from English, Dutch, French began to come to India for trading purpose, right? This was one very important sea route which was formed by Vasco da Gama to reach India. And secondly, we need to read about Christopher Columbus, who was an Italian, and he thought that he was also set to find out a route to India, but by as it was destined, he landed in West Indies, and that's why which got their name because of this confusion. He thought that he has discovered a route to India, but he has reached West Indies. So again, जब एक रास्ता खुल जाता तो उसको बहुत लोग फॉलो करते हैं. He was followed by sailors and conquerors from Spain and Portuguese who occupied large parts of Central and South America, often destroying earlier settlement in the area. So what was happening, what we have read in this chapter, कि always there were some important towns and trades in the native place, and with the change in the society, with the invasions and all, these centers, how these towns were raised, how the traders were flourishing, and how they get infected by the coming of invaders, and what happened. So this is all about the rise and doom of some towns, right? So this was all in this chapter, and we will be discussing doubts regarding this chapter in the doubt class. So be prepared with your doubts. See you in the doubt class. Bye for now.